Hello, this is Renee Eady from the Ready Train. I'm here with Jim Haggerty, president of Eady, Wrayanne Parker, a DBHDD provider and master's addiction counselor who works in the West Georgia area, Jim Morton, who's an LPC, a DBHDD provider for both clinical evaluations and treatment. We're here together today to discuss Georgia Unum and how that process is working for them. Jim, would you like to start us off?
Sure, Renee. First of all, thank you for inviting me into this conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk about Unum and how this process is developing. Just a little bit of background for folks who may listen to this and not be aware of how we got to this point. We have been having conversations between ADE and the Department of Behavioral Health for really a number of years about this idea of creating an online, paperless document sharing and client management software application. And it really moved from the discussion phase into the planning phase in about the middle of last year, the middle of 2016. Renee, you and I sat down with Dr. Dunbar, just sort of sketch out what it might look like, and then we had a more formal meeting with DBH later in the summer of last year, and at that point we dove into creating this application. We got to the point really December of 2016 or January of 2017 where we felt like we had most of the program complete to where we wanted it, and we opened it up to some of the providers to use it. And I'm grateful that you have Wrayanne and Jim here on the conversation, because those are two of the folks who have really been helpful to us in this beta testing, in this pilot program phase, to get in and actually use the application and develop some thoughts about it. So I kind of want to start there. Maybe we know here on our end, we know most of what the DBH program entails. We know what most of the procedures are, but we're not the ones who are using it in the field, actually. And so it's been helpful to us to get people who are in the field to get in, start using it. We've received some very good feedback over the last several months that have helped us fine-tune the application. We are at the point now where we are starting to look at the next phase of this, which is where we will be addressing the treatment component, but that's probably another conversation. But Wrayanne, maybe I can start with you. I'd like to get your thoughts about what was your impression when this idea began to be floated for this online document sharing client management system that would require you to really go through a learning curve and to get acquainted with this application. What were your initial thoughts, and what are your thoughts now that you've been using it for a number of weeks?
My initial thoughts was skeptical. You know, I have a busy schedule just like everyone else, and having to learn something new was, you know, of course it gives you a little anxiety, and then you know there's going to be problems and issues that are going to come up. And so I was a little skeptical, trying to make sure that I could continue the flow of my work, because I had a pretty good system down already, I thought, and I thought it was pretty efficient. So just learning something new is a little bit, you know, anxiety provoking. But now after a few weeks, I know that, you know, my system was, it worked for me, but it was definitely a lot more difficult than Unum is. And so it's, after learning the program and learning how to really utilize the features, it's been really beneficial.
And Jim, you've been one of the more active folks in Unum as well. What, I guess the same question I have for you. What were your initial thoughts, and what have you thought over the last 5 or 6 weeks?
I was at a place in my career where, well, I guess like most of us providers, we're moving toward paperless systems for HIPAA reasons and efficiency. So I was excited, particularly because it was endorsed by DBHDD, and that, that y'all were working as partners to put together something that would be accepted by DBHDD and maybe not scrutinized as much as some other program that may have been created by another company that wasn't working in concert. So I was at a place where I was sort of shopping around other electronic records systems and comparing prices. So I came to the training, and then I was pleasantly surprised to hear that this wasn't going to cost me too, because the fee gets passed on to the customer, and the clinical eval fee was quickly raised, as everyone knows. So I'm loving it.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm glad you mentioned DBH. I just want to say that we've been working. I've known Scott Dunbar for quite a while now, and we've done a number of things together before. And they've been great to work with, and I think the fact that we had an existing relationship with them to some degree helped us as we sort of put our heads together on what this project might look like and how it might be funded. That's a key point that you brought up too. And it's one thing to make a program like this, and this program is cutting edge technology. There's some things in the program that are really we're real forward thinking, and I think they're going to be real cool features. But how do we make that accessible to the DBH providers, and how do we make it affordable? Those were some of the big questions, and working with DBH to address those questions has just been really great. And I know that I also want to say that we could not have done this. We couldn't have got to the place we are now without the very valuable assistance of Renee, Eady, and I know she has some questions for you as well, but I want to say here to you and to anybody who may be listening to this how indebted we are not only to the folks at DBH but also to Renee as we navigated through, and they taught us what the process needed to be, and we ended up with a program that I think is tailored for the DBH providers. So I'm just really grateful for all of their assistance, and I'm very grateful to you, Jim, and to you, Wrayanne, for being the early adopters, and maybe despite some of the initial skepticism, being willing to get in and give this a shot and find out just how beneficial it is. So with that, Renee, I know you have some questions for Jim and Wrayanne. I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. So it sounds like we were at a really good place. Wrayanne, you thought you had a really good process and weren't eager to change, but now that you have changed, you kind of moved into a different spot. And Jim, you were weighing out electronic records already because you knew this was the wave of the future anyway. And so now that you've both had a chance to work with Unum for over a month now, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts about how it has changed your process and the benefits to you as a clinician and as well as your clients. And I'll start with you, Jim, first, and then we'll hear from Wrayanne.
Okay. Well, I mentioned other programs could be scrutinized by DBH. I don't mean that that's not against anyone at the DUI intervention program. It's my concerns about when I get audited by APS that I've got to have the right pieces of paper in the file, and I'm not a very organized person, and I can blame my staff all I want, but sometimes people will, make the last copy of whatever piece of paper, and I've always been anxious that, it's a big deal when you're running several. I don't just do DUI evals. I do a lot of different criminal justice evals. So I've got to have all these different packets of paper. When a client logs into their Unum account and clicks, I agree to the clinical eval, it's got at least 6 or 7, it's got my contract, it's got the please read statements, it's all the stuff that APS, if they're still the ones that do the audits, it's been a few years for me, thank goodness, but everything that they might be looking for that also ensures I'm informing the client what I need to inform them ethically under HIPAA. It's there. And so if they want to reflect, if they want to look back at it, it stays in their account. So having, the paperless system is great. I like the fact that I can administer the DAST, the MAST, the audit. There's a number of assessments I can send to my consumers. Most of them have a cell phone and will take these evals, like they'll fill out the MAST on their phone while I might be typing their clinical, and then they put it back into the system. So those are nice features. And just stop me, Renee, if I drone on too long. But the clinical eval template is nice because you've got all the DSM criteria for substance use disorders. You've got risk factors. You've got the ASAM criterion. And so it's really the nuts and bolts of what we're supposed to be doing as evaluators. The most crucial information is in that form, and it doesn't take a long time to complete it and then share it with probation. The consumer can pull it down later whenever they need it. So those are the things off the top of my head that I like.
Right. I really appreciate you saying all those positive things about Unum. I never get tired of hearing those things. And that was our main goal, to be able to put packages together that are at the fingertips of the evaluator, try to make it intuitive to use, but also ease of use, efficiency of use, and the template was a big part of that, as well as the assessment tool.
One of my concerns right off the bat was, well, what if they don't have a computer? What if they're a person that can't afford internet at home? So I fixed that pretty quickly with your suggestion, Renee, that I have a tablet or another computer. And I've even had consumers that didn't even have an email. So we set up a Gmail. They log in, they create their Unum account, and they're sitting right next to me during the process. Mm-hmm. Or if we need to do it the old-fashioned way, I still have, papers. If they prefer that, I can still do that and do releases, on paper. I can still use the electronic system, even if the customer prefers to have their own paper copies. I can print things out for them. But most people are just, they want to get their clinical over and find out what happens next. So I haven't had any resistance from consumers.
Yeah, it allows you to meet the client where they are, as whether they want to use their cell phone, a tablet you have in the office, or do it the paper and pencil method.
Right.
Wrayanne?
Well, I don't know if I can really add to that. He really said it all. Everything that I find to be convenient about it, not having to have a huge file of paper and some of it that I may or may not use depending on the situation. I can create documents within the system and send them directly to them, which I have used and do like that. Also, not having to have the huge files full of paper. I haven't run into, and fortunately enough, I've only run into a couple of people that have not had an email or didn't have internet access, and like Jim said, I can just do it right there beside them, and so it's really been convenient. I also do other criminal justice evaluations, and so depending on the situation, I can create whatever is needed for that person and keep it very person-centered, which I try to do. And just the convenience of it has been very beneficial to me. I can get them done in one day rather than having to print them off and get them signed and wait for them to get all their information to me. I can get it all within one day.
So it has streamlined your process a good bit, Wrayanne.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I think you were telling me last week about the time frame. What used to take you almost a week, you've cut that in half?
At least. probably even more now that I've gotten over the month, I've kind of perfected my own craft. And so I've learned from my own mistakes. There's been a couple of times where I've hadn't got certain things and had to contact the person to get them. So now I've got it a little bit more streamlined, and I can usually get it done in the same day, where it took me at least 2 or 3 days to get it all typed up and finished sometimes. And so this way it's been a lot more time efficient.
Well, great, great. So, Jim, you have anything else you'd like to ask?
Well, one feature that I like, and I'm going to add an administrative person for a number of reasons, and I'm adding a person, but one thing that they can do that doesn't require the clinical evaluator to do is the admin staff can set up the account when a consumer calls. They can pay PayPal through my website. As soon as they do that, then we can send them the agreement. We can send them the MAST. We depending on the circumstances, I wouldn't, I'm going to review those documents with the patient in front of me, but some of we can get the needs. We can get a lot of the things that the evaluator needs. So when the client gets there, yeah, I don't have to have them come back for follow-up. And so that's great, because I'm sure all of y'all can relate to the fact that you see someone, and then if they don't come back and then they go into a pending status, then it complicates my reporting to DBH. And, they've got a great, pretty easy system for reporting my monthlies. But once again, being a pretty disorganized person, all I have to do now with Unum to get my numbers for my CE, for my CEs, is to hit the report button, and it prints out the little, this is how many first offenders, this is how many multiples, etc. So that saves me time, and I'm looking forward to when we move toward treatment, toward managing treatment too.
Yeah, to be able to have your progress notes and everything all in one place at your fingertips as well.
Right, and I know that's a huge, I know it's a huge technical endeavor, but I think we're off to y'all are off to a good start, and when I get time, I'll, continue to kind of personalize some of my other assessments for, say, anger management or whatever the consumer might be coming in. Right now, I'm using the DUI template for substance abuse evals, but I type in the top line, this is not a DUI template, and I work with just a handful of probation officers so they know it's, no one's complained of that, and it's pretty much the same. You were doing alcohol and other drug eval anyway. It's when we do a substance abuse or DUI eval, they're very similar.
You're collecting that same information and weighing that out, very similar to
right.
Make your decision about your recommendation, no matter if it's a substance abuse or a clinical eval.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So when you think about your clients, are there some benefits that you can think of that the client has now with this digital system?
Well, the benefits that I see is that I'm able to communicate, and I haven't had this happen yet, but my biggest fear is the ones that aren't real technologically savvy. Once we get done, we're kind of going to be done. But so far, I'm able to use the chat, the instant messaging, where they can send me messages, they can sign paperwork that's additionally needed. Being able to upload it and send it through the portal is a whole lot more protective, rather than them faxing or emailing it, say if they have references, notarized references they need, and things like that. So it's, I think it's convenient for them, and also I can make sure that if they have access to their clinical evaluation if they need it. So I think it protects them in a lot of ways, and it's also it's convenient for them too.
Mm-hmm. Jim, what have your thoughts been about the benefits to the client?
Well, what Wrayanne just ended with was what I was going to say. I had a consumer, I don't recall the circumstances, but I think he had some issue in Florida, maybe a public drunk. I don't know. So, and believe it or not, our consumers don't always tell us everything going on. But I said, this, I don't know if this will apply to whatever you've got going on in Florida, but it's legitimate substance abuse, Eval, and you'll have access to it. And so he said, he was glad to hear that, that it would be there. I don't know how long their account stays active. I guess I need to check into that, but it is also a good way to send. If they say, oh, by the way, I'm on probation in this other county too, well, I can invite that probation officer and send the secure release of information or whatever documents I need to someone without having the patient have to come physically sign a piece of paper, make the trip to the office. It can be done electronically. So
yeah, and
nice.
just to add to what Jim just said, I had someone that had a defects case, and we had been, a couple of weeks completed with probation, and she did the same thing. She said, my defects case is wanting just some kind of evaluation. They said, that they would take it, and so I was able to get another release and get it stamped without her having to come back, and able to communicate with her and just say, if this is what they need, then this is a legitimate evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and of course on those, if they leave something off their criminal history, like say a public drunk in Florida, I tell them, well, if you're not honest about your whole history and somebody reads this, that if if you're trying to use it for a purpose you haven't disclosed to me, it's going to invalidate it and it won't work. So, and oftentimes with defects, those are there may be different concerns that the caseworker has than the Department of Driver Services might have, or the clinical evaluator. But nonetheless, it is what it is, and I like the format of the report that y'all put together, the template.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it covers all the information that's in the case management, case presentation format from DBHDD from several years ago, the 13-page report, but it's in a report that expands based on your needs or whatever your client's situation is, whether there's a lot of information to add or less, based on tailoring it to.
It does. There's the ability to upload things such as affidavits, and the 13-page document includes supporting documents, so they can be scanned into the system, as I understand. And I haven't tried this out of state yet, but I have an out-of-state case. And, those are all different in DBHDD. We don't report those unless they have some sort of Georgia involvement, but I think this case was out of New Jersey, so I have to conduct the assessment based on their New Jersey criteria. And so this, when you include the DSM and the ASM placement criteria, and the MAST, say, or audit, that probably covers all 50 states, I think it's what we've been doing for a long time. It's just all in one spot,
Yeah, so even if you have to put it in a different format, you have all the information you need if you use the template to collect the information to begin with.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Jim Haggerty, do you have some questions?
Well, I'm listening to this. It's very gratifying to hear that people are using the application and they're able to take advantage of all the features that we built in. It's just really gratifying to hear. Jim, you were mentioning some of the assessments. I do want to tell you that we have a marijuana history and severity scale that will be in the application probably within the next couple of weeks. We have it written. We're doing a little bit of internal testing, and I think that you'll find it as useful as some of the other assessments that are in there. You mentioned the MAST and the DAST and the audit. And it's our intention to continue to build that library of assessments, whether they are created here by ADE or whether we use some other public domain instruments. It really is our intention to increase that list of options for available assessments. So keep your eye out for that, and I think that will even expand on the usefulness of the application. So it's really, but it's very, very gratifying to hear that you're using it and taking advantage of the features that are built in. I wonder if you could, both of you maybe could talk about the training, talk about the orientation to the program. Are there things that were very helpful to you during the training process, or equally as important, are there things that might improve that training process as more and more people come on board? Wrayanne, maybe we'll start with you.
What could improve the process?
The training process.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Okay. I think with the training process, I think it's going to be important to make sure that what you're teaching or how you're teaching Unum does align with DBHDD and kind of what they require to. And I think that was helpful to have Renee, because she does have experience with that, to do that kind of work. I also think it's important to kind of outline what it really would look like. And this is something that I missed in the training, what it would really look like when you sit down with somebody. So say, okay, so someone comes in and kind of walk through that. This is what you do A, B, and C. I kind of fumbled through that my first couple of times, what I needed to do and how to make sure I got all the information, make sure I got the associates registered, things like that. So, but those kind of things would probably be beneficial to someone newly starting this.
And Jim, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree, and I only heard 1 hour of 2-hour training because I'm a little directionally challenged too at times. But I heard the second half when I walked into the training there at the college campus in Douglasville, wherever that was, West Georgia, I think. You were right at the point where you were saying, everybody look at your emails and look at the invite, and I was able to get onto the Wi-Fi at the training facility, and some of the other of my colleagues couldn't for whatever reason. But I think that's critical to have us bring our computers and log in and play around with it. And I can't really criticize the training or make suggestions since I missed the first half, but I know once I started using it, it was pretty easy to learn, and I had to call Renee, and I had to call your tech support, Craig, and I once accidentally sent a report to Craig, and he called me immediately on my cell phone and said, what are you trying to do? I said, I don't know. So I had missed a couple of features, but then he also shared with me an online training manual, so now I just refer to that if I need to figure out something that I haven't done before. So
I really want to thank you both for your faith in this project and for the time that you've spent and the feedback that you've given. It's really, as I say, it's gratifying to me, and it's been helpful to us. Jim, what would you tell somebody who is not yet using Unum and may have some of the same skepticism that you had? What message would you convey to them?
I've definitely encouraged my colleagues that are clinical evaluators to use it. I hope people don't look at it and say, well, I'm going to be making $15 more if I don't use it. You're going to spend that much time, I promise you, Xeroxing, going to Office Depot and buying reams of paper and all the paper when you're using a paper system, storage of records, it's certainly worth the money that we're being charged for the service, and I don't know of any competitor that would do it any cheaper based on my prior research. So I encourage folks to use it and also say, and it's going to take you a few times to get it down. So, you need to practice. I do remember, like Wrayanne said, for me, the first couple, I would just kind of got locked. They sat there, and I'm like, am I going to be able to get through this? But I did, and then once you do it once or twice, it's pretty intuitive and easy to learn. So, and I'm not being paid to say this, believe it or not, y'all. No one's gonna believe me, I guess, but I like it.
I appreciate that. Renee, maybe you can talk a little bit about the idea of the trial phase, the ability to try it out, to allay your fears before you actually become active.
And some of the comments that Ray made right there at the beginning, talking about training, is seeing how it works with an actual client. And that's something that has changed since we started this process. As part of the training is we have other participants pretend to be the client, and they work through a simulated client back and forth, and then they switch, and the other person becomes the clinician and the other person becomes the client. So that has worked out well. And then after the training, people can use me as the client, or Craig if they would like, and they can set me up as a client, and as long as I know, then I will play right back with them. I'll take the MAST or the DAST, whichever one they send to me. I'll sign documents, I'll sign releases, and people can kind of see how that works. They can also set up a friend in the system, and they get to put as many files as they want into Unum as far as a trial basis. And then once they decide they want to go active, then we're going to wipe out all of those fake or trial clients so that the provider has a clean slate to start from. So you don't get charged at all for the training or for putting in trial accounts, and you can put as many as you want.
I think that would be really helpful, and I think you offered me that experience, but I jumped in with both feet, and so I don't regret it. But I think that would be helpful for people trying to make the decision to join Unum for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea just to play around. But hey, I'm one of those too, Wrayanne. I like to jump in the deep end and try to swim, and that's usually how I've done things. Whether you like to learn by trial by fire or whether you like to take some time and practice with it, we'll work with you either way a person wants to learn how to use Unum. Craig and I have tried to be accessible at a variety of times of the day, evening as well. Some of you may have been able to take advantage of send us an email. We try to call you back, as you mentioned, Jim, or receive emails back quickly. Our overall goal is to create, to have something that is efficient for the providers, that's secure, it's flexible, you can share between all stakeholders if possible, be able to transfer or share information, and have this powerful reporting tool. And based on what you two have been telling me today, I think we've met that goal.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'm excited to see where it goes from here, because you keep adding features, which is great. You keep adding some ease to the registration, or at least some clarification to the registration of associates, which is great. I like the marijuana screening, like that's going to be really helpful. And I agree with, and Jim said it before, all the assessments that are right there at your fingertips, instead of carrying, tons of paper and getting people to hand do them, it's extremely helpful. So I'm excited to see what else y'all can add. I can't imagine there'd be more, but if we can streamline reporting, that would be even more beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah, not only assessment, I really like the problems with the MAST and the audit are they're only as good as how honest the patient is. So to do a good clinical, when they say, I've never had problems from my drinking, it's like, well, you don't consider 3 DUIs problems. It's still a valuable tool, even if they aren't completely honest, because you'll see that they're hiding something about their substance use behavior. But as many evidence-based. I'm a big believer in past behavior, predicts future behavior. So if someone, I guess that's why we pull the driving record, and so the more evidence-based, non-self-report instruments, if those exist, bring them on. But yeah, I think you're off to a great start there. There's nothing you've put on there that, I don't use anything that's not already in there is what I'm trying to say. We get the needs and then use something like the mass generally, or the SASSY, that's the old days, I guess. The SASSY, SAUCY, I use the JASSY in my juvenile program.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being here with us today. And we've moved from doing some investigating about electronic records, from skepticism to a fully utilizing Unum, and even excited about the next features that are going to be coming out soon.
Absolutely.
Well, I look forward to it.
Jim Haggerty, do you have anything?
Well, I echo what you say, Renee. Thank you for being willing to be involved in this conversation. I think this is going to be the first of many. I think it's a good way to get information out. It'll be a way for us to talk about the new features as they do pop up, and it will be a way for, hopefully, for users to communicate with other users and just kind of have an ongoing conversation about Unum and how to make it even better. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your willingness to do this. And stay tuned, because we do have some new features that we're going to be announcing over the course of the next few months, and we're very excited about diving in and expanding this into treatment clients as well. Those conversations have already begun, and so we're excited to see where that goes. So Renee, thanks for hosting us today, and Jim and Wrayanne, thanks for being involved.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee.